You're the reason why I am my way. You're the reason why I rip my shirts, why I eat at the buffet. Butter, you got your very own kind of nice. We all live inside a butter world. Oh, butter, butter. Gonna eat it by the stick tonight. Gonna eat out this world. Oh, butter. I'm about to take a bite, 'cause I want that salty cream. What I dream about all night. Butter dreaming. I'm about to take a bite, 'cause I want that salty cream. What I dream about all.
Welcome, everyone.
Yo, 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 yo.
Welcome to a episode of Study Club with Butterfueled.
Yeah, it's time to geek out, guys. What's up?
Exactly. Time to geek out. Time to go over a paper. Time to expand our knowledge with the science.
The
Trademark.
science.
The science.
Yeah, what are the experts saying?
What is Fauci saying?
Yeah, what is the latest literature saying on lipidology? I don't know. I want to see. I need some confirmation bias from these experts. Are we on the right track?
Are we on the right track? Exactly. Are we killing ourselves by getting healthy, or are we getting healthy by getting healthy? Let's find out. No bias.
Healthy is as healthy does. And our daily bread is not. Our daily bread is killing us, guys.
Yeah. I would say so. So.
Yeah. But yeah, today we have it's a perspective paper. So it's not actually a study, unlike last time. Last time we actually reviewed a study, but this time this is a perspective paper by a professor from the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry at Long Island University in Brooklyn, New York, USA, Dr. Glenn D. Lawrence. Yeah, who wrote a perspective paper called Perspective, the Saturated Fat, Unsaturated Oil Dilemma, Relations of Dietary Fatty Acids and Serum Cholesterol, Atherosclerosis, Inflammation, Cancer, and All-Cause Mortality. Oh, there we go. We have it on screen. Yeah. So this it's important. It's important to highlight this is not a study. This is basically like a scientific level opinion piece by a professor, right? He's writing this paper. He wrote this paper in 2021, I believe, and this was his way. It's like an opinion piece for other academics. He's kind of like nudging them on this direction, being like, hey, I think there's something here. I'm making the case that, there's these relations with the fatty acids and heart disease that I think we've overlooked, right? That go against like the mainstream narrative of saturated fats and animal fats being something that needs to be minimized, right? If you go and check, the USDA or AHA or whatever, maybe the WHO, all of them, they all seem to have the same opinion. They will tell you currently that you should limit your saturated fat calories below 10%. Why is that? Well, because it's been associated with all sorts of heart disease and elevated cholesterol. And elevated cholesterol is, by and large, the most causative biomarker for heart disease, which, we already addressed this in many times. We've addressed heart disease many times on our show. If you're interested in taking a look at those, you can check out the previous study club, What Gives Women a Heart Attack? Very romantic. And then we've also covered what actually clogs arteries in one of our Monday night or Saturday Night Live episodes. So you can catch those before. And of course, we go over this plenty of times on our Instagram page. Is saturated fat cholesterol associated with heart disease? Well, not really. Are there any better markers for that? Of course, yeah. There are many more important markers you can look for rather than just focusing on your LDL. Contrary to what the mainstream nerds will tell you, um, you know, they have to demonize LDL. They have to make LDL the scapegoat because that is the only leg they have, kind of illegitimate leg, but it's the only leg they have to blame saturated fats for raising LDL. And actually, and why do plant oils, seed oils, or other plant oils lower your LDL? We actually just covered that on our Monday Night Live show, the previous one.
Yeah.
What do we call that one? Do you remember, Jay?
The last seed oils are good.
Oh yeah, seed oils are good. Yeah, that was the 5 reasons seed oils are good. That was our last Monday night, and we covered 5 reasons why seed oils are good, and kind of go through some data points. I think one of the more interesting ones was point number 5: plant sterols. The real reason why your cholesterol goes down. Now, this paper doesn't talk about plant sterols; it talks about other things. But I think we're seeing a full picture come together, and I don't know. I'm feeling like we're getting a very good understanding of what is actually going on, what actually causes heart disease. And more we dive into this, the more and more I realize animals are our friends, plants are suspicious. I'll leave it at that.
Absolutely, yeah. Animals are our friends. Plants are suspicious. I love that.
Yeah.
It's
And
rings
animal
very
fats we
true.
trust.
In animal fats we trust. Uh, Excellent. Yeah. So as the title, as my brother said, is the perspective, the saturated fat, unsaturated oil dilemma, relations of dietary fatty acids and serum cholesterol, atherosclerosis, inflammation, cancer, and all-cause mortality.
Yeah.
Right.
So he kind of touches on all those points. Very, very important.
Yeah.
And for those not familiar, atherosclerosis is just a fancy word for saying, artery clogging,
Yeah.
clogged arteries, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Atherosclerosis. All right. I'm gonna read the abstract.
Yeah.
I think
It's
it's
a good
pretty
place to
good.
start.
Yeah. PUFAs are known to regulate cholesterol synthesis and cellular uptake by multiple mechanisms that do not involve SFAs. Polymorphisms in any of the numerous proteins involving cholesterol homeostasis as a result of genetic variation could lead to higher or lower serum cholesterol. PUFAs are susceptible to lipid peroxidation, which can lead to oxidative stress, interesting, inflammation, atherosclerosis, cancer, and disorders associated with inflammation, such as insulin resistance, arthritis, and numerous inflammatory syndromes. Basically, everything, everything bad. Eicosanoids from arachidonic acid are among the most powerful mediators that initiate an immune response, and a wide range of PUFA metabolites regulate numerous physiological processes. There is a misconception that dietary SFAs, saturated fatty acids, can cause inflammation, although endogenous palmitic acid is converted to ceramides and other cell constituents involved inflammatory response after it is initiated by lipid mediators derived from PUFAs. This article will discuss the many misconceptions regarding how dietary lipids regulate serum cholesterol. The fact that all-cause death rate is higher in humans with low compared with normal or moderated elevated serum total cholesterol, the numerous adverse effects of the increasing dietary PUFAs or carbohydrates relative to SFAs, as well as metabolic conversion of PUFAs to SFAs and MUFAs as a protective mechanism. Consequently, dietary saturated fats seem to be less harmful than the proposed alternative.
There you go.
Excellent.
There, we can wrap it up now. Go home.
All set and done.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, PUFAs cause inflammation. and cause arthritis and all sorts of inflammatory syndromes, right? Are we surprised? Not really.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, based on what we already know, of course.
Yeah. I think this line also here it's not highlighting. Lipid serum cholesterol all-cause death rate is higher in humans with low compared with normal or moderately elevated serum cholesterol. So basically, all-cause mortality, dying by any reason or any cause, you see that more in the low serum cholesterol group
Yeah,
of people.
yeah,
So you have to ask yourself, why do they want to lower our LDL so hard?
yeah. As we know, higher cholesterol is associated with longevity. No surprise in the elderly, especially. Right.
Yeah.
Most heart attacks happen in people with lower LDLs. You
Hmm.
know, so that is not an invitation to lower the reference ranges. That's an invitation to reconsider the whole hypothesis, the whole theory of LDL being causative, right?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yes. All right. So starting off at the introduction, let's see, how do we get started? Um, yeah, I did highlight some here, but okay. Uh, the notion that dietary fats raise serum cholesterol originated from the misinterpretation of several studies that showed if confined individuals consumed diets containing fats with mostly SFAs and little or no PUFAs, serum cholesterol was higher compared when the same individual consumed diets containing an abundance of PUFAs. When they consumed diets with a high proportion of MUFAs, serum cholesterol was intermediate. The fact that high MUFA diets contained an intermediate amount of PUFAs was generally ignored. Interesting. Um, One could conclude from such results that dietary saturated fats raise serum cholesterol, but the interpretation that PUFAs are responsible for regulating serum cholesterol is generally overlooked. So, yeah.
Yeah. So it's about the framing, right? Like
Mhm.
he's saying like, you know, you could frame it as saturated fats raise your cholesterol, or PUFAs regulate, and by regulating, lowering your cholesterol, right? So not necessarily saturated fats elevate it, but maybe saturated fats just establish the normal baseline, and PUFAs actually lower those numbers for you, right? So kind of like the flip side of what is currently interpreted as normal, right? The conventional way of thinking. High cholesterol, oh my God. It's like, no, no, no. Maybe that's your normal cholesterol,
Yeah.
depending on the context, right? Of course.
Depends on the
Obese,
context. Yeah.
yeah. Diabetic, overweight, muffin top, so on and so forth.
Yeah. And it's also interesting that for some reason it was decided that we should look at PUFAs and saturated fats. However, high MUFA diets were also like showed intermediate levels. Diets that had high proportions of MUFAs had intermediate levels of cholesterol. So MUFA like kind of seems to play a role too um, in serum cholesterol levels, but that was just not paid attention to. All right. The emphasis on promoting a low fat, low saturated fat diet resulted in a large increase in carbohydrate consumption, and most of that increase was in the form of sugars and highly refined carbohydrates. When dietary saturated fats are replaced with carbohydrates, there is no change in serum cholesterol when dietary PUFAs remain unchanged.
Mm-hmm.
So swapping out saturated fats with carbohydrates, and you keep PUFAs constant, serum cholesterol stays the same. That's as it seems. Interesting. Yet replacing saturated fats with carbohydrates, especially refined carbohydrates, gives rise to pro-atherogenic dyslipidemia, as well as low-grade systemic inflammation and insulin resistance, which all increases the risk of cardiovascular disease. So taking away the saturated fat and putting in carbohydrates, now you have inflammation happening. Now you have the insulin resistance. I mean, you're on the path towards insulin resistance.
Yeah, yeah, and usually you'll see that by elevated blood glucose levels and increased triglycerides as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then increased blood glucose on average. Give that long enough time, it becomes an inflammatory state, and it can cause oxidative damage to your LDL particles,
Yeah.
right? Which will then is conducive to atherosclerosis.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's what this sentence over here means.
Yeah,
Pro-atherogenic dyslipidemia. So yeah, that's your high triglycerides, uh, small dense LDL, so on and so forth.
yeah,
Let's see. Changes in saturated fat intake in adults with metabolic syndrome resulted in no significant changes in proportions of SFAs in any plasma lipid fractions, whereas replacement of dietary saturated fats with carbohydrates showed a direct correlation between carbohydrate intake and proportions of palmitoylate in plasma triglycerides and cholesterol esters, palmitoylate in plasma cholesterol esters, plasma phospholipids, and erythrocyte membranes is a consistent predictor of type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome.
yeah. I get just what we were saying. So,
Yeah,
more carbs.
yeah, pro-atherogenic um, triglycerides. Um, when you replace saturated fats with carbohydrates. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Yeah. Take away saturated fats, you get type 2 diabetes. Take away saturated fats, you get metabolic
Yeah,
syndrome.
overnight.
Overnight. If you have a day of zero saturated fat, suddenly you are type 2 diabetic the next day.
Jeez. Yeah.
Moving on, let's see. This is where we talk about the all-cause death mortality. But yeah, overall mortality, not just coronary death, should be the primary concern when considering dietary recommendations for the general public. Several studies from diverse populations have shown that all-cause death rate is greater for low serum total cholesterol when you have less than 180 milligrams per deciliter than for intermediate to moderately high serum cholesterol, so 180 to 240 mg per deciliter, particularly in elderly populations.
That's right. As we said at the start, moderately high serum cholesterol seems to be protective in elderly populations. I like that they mentioned here the 7-country study too. So they say it's important to note that the 2 Finnish cohorts of the 7-country study, which had the highest median serum cholesterol for all cohorts at greater than 250 mg per deciliter, had more overall deaths in the subgroup with the lowest 30% of serum cholesterol than there were in the highest 30% of serum cholesterol. Okay, so in the Finnish cohort, the group in the in the lowest 30% of serum cholesterol had a higher death rate than the one in the highest 30%. Okay, so you
Wow.
see, it's a supporting data points that how did we ever come to this point when the data shows things like these. Of course, there might be anomalies outside of the trends or whatever, but still, this just highlights that the emphasis should not be lowering your LDL, but rather just like focusing on overall mortality, right? I think that's the point that this guy is trying to make. It doesn't make sense to set out on this mission of just lowering your LDL as much as you can, because clearly even the data that they use doesn't support it.
Insane.
Yeah,
Because it all started with this 7-country study.
yeah. Yeah, and another point that he underscores, which is very, very important, is by virtue of reducing the dietary fat, they had to increase something else, right? What do you suppose it
Mm,
was? Dietary carbohydrates. Of course, we all remember the food pyramid, which is not a thing anymore, but 6 to 11 servings of grains at the base. Come on, are you serious? They feed cattle grain to fatten them up. Why would you ever expect a different result when you do that to humans?
exactly.
And
Exactly.
and cattle are adapted to like eat fibrous foods. We're not. So,
Yeah.
well, I guess
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
we eat refined grains, right? We don't eat we don't eat
Yeah.
like stalks of corn,
Yeah. We need
corn
it
stalks.
pre-processed in order to
Yeah,
like eat it.
yeah,
Eat all these unnatural amounts of wheat, corn, soybean, um, all this stuff. Yeah, man. I don't know. It's interesting that that they recommend grains so much, and it's like people never made the connection. Like, yeah, you feed grain to cattle.
It's because when they put fear in your mind, put fear in your heart, you'll accept anything.
That's true.
Yeah. Anyhow, let's go back to the
Pushing
paper.
on. Numerous reports and meta-analysis support the idea that saturated fats have no influence on the incidence of cardiovascular disease, coronary heart disease, type 2 diabetes, or death from all causes. And he's citing 9, 19 through 22. So, yeah, now obviously he's establishing the point that, saturated fat actually seems to have no impact or any influence with cardiovascular disease, the thing that we have been accepting as belief, as truth, since the 60s. We are in 2023. It's been 60 years. It's time to move on.
Yeah.
It's time to move. Let's let go of this belief that's been given to us.
Yeah.
Uh,
So focus on the actual evidence and not just consensus, which is just opinion of some nerd, some vegan nerd at Harvard.
the mighty intellectuals, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
PhDs.
all right, so let's see. Yeah, health authorities continue to stress the studies that show a decrease in serum cholesterol in response to replacing dietary saturated fatty acids with PUFAs, and conflate that to mean that dietary saturated fats increase the risk of cardiovascular disease and death from coronary heart disease. Okay, blah blah blah. The flaws in the studies used to support the diet heart hypothesis have been documented for years, yet dietary guidelines from many sources continue to push for lower dietary intake of all saturated fats, with no substantial scientific support for that policy.
Yeah. Pretty alarming stuff, People gotta wake up, man. People gotta
Yeah,
wake up. Yeah.
people gotta wake up.
Yeah. It's a powerful introduction from what was his name?
Uh,
Glenn D.
uh,
Lawrence,
Gl-
Professor Lawrence.
Professor Lawrence, Glenn D.
Yeah.
Lawrence. All right.
Yeah. So
PUFA oxidation and lipid peroxidation. You wanna to read it?
yeah. So PUFAs are important for production of a wide range of bioactive substances in the body, but like some vitamins and essential minerals, may become toxic when consumed in excess. PUFAs can be oxidized in a spontaneous chemical oxidation process that does not require enzymes and would not be regulated in cells by normal processes. This spontaneous oxidation is initiated by free radicals, reactive oxygen species, and reactive nitrogen species, which are constantly being formed in biological systems. This free radical oxidation process, which is known as lipid peroxidation, requires molecular oxygen and produces fatty acid peroxides, reactive carbonyl species such as malondialdehyde, as well as other numerous toxic products.
Nice.
The wide array of ROS, RNS, and toxic organic products formed during lipid peroxidation of PUFAs can cause mutations in DNA, which can lead to cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of alarming stuff. Yeah,
Yeah. So basically, what metabolizing PUFAs, your polyunsaturated fat, you are producing free radicals, free reactive oxygen species, and reactive nitrogen species. Uh, and these free radicals uh, can cause DNA mutations and can lead to cancer. So why are we pushing vegetable oil?
Yeah, why?
Why?
Yeah, we know they are chemically unstable, and we went into depth in this in our previous Monday Night Live. 5 reasons why seed oils are good. But
Yeah.
it's worth checking out what this guy has to say. So
Yeah.
he proceeds to say, the body has many protective systems to combat lipid peroxidation, including lipid-soluble antioxidants such as vitamin E, enzymes that eliminate ROS and RNS, and enzymes that metabolize the lipid peroxides to detoxify them.
Yeah, it's interesting
Yeah.
that he highlights vitamin E, right? That is a antioxidant to help you fight your free radicals, um, which is interesting because plants seem to be high in vitamin E,
Yeah,
um,
and also high in PUFA.
and high in PUFA. So what wins in the end seems to be the PUFA, I would say. It doesn't seem like the vitamin E content is not enough.
Yeah, the poison always wins. Toxicity always wins.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, you should reduce the poison instead of being okay with the poison and like relying on your antioxidants. Of course, the master antioxidant is glutathione, and you produce that endogenously, and ketosis upregulates glutathione, and you need lots of sulfur-rich foods to synthesize that glutathione. What is like the richest food in sulfur? Eggs. So eat
Nice.
eggs.
Eggs, baby, eggs.
Yeah. So what does he go on to say next? So lipid peroxidation of PUFAs and lipoproteins such as LDLs, resulting in oxidized LDLs being removed from the circulation by macrophages lining the arteries, leading to atherosclerosis. Oh, I like this. Although consuming more PUFA-rich vegetable oils can lower serum cholesterol and LDL cholesterol, it is the PUFAs in LDLs that are susceptible to lipid peroxidation, which destines the lipoprotein and its cholesterol load to atherosclerotic deposits surrounding the arteries.
Yeah.
Did you catch that? You want to highlight that? Yeah, nice. You got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, he's just highlighting. We basically mentioned this on almost like every episode that we do, because it's just like it's really important to understand the mechanisms by which our arteries get clogged. Our LDLs are little boats, and they carry fatty acids. If you're eating PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids, that is what is going to be carried by the boat. PUFAs are, of course, chemically unstable, oxidation prone. So if they become reactive oxidative species, they're going to cause lipid peroxidation on the LDL particle. So now the LDL is damaged. It is unrecognized by your body. It is a foreign agent to your body. So then your immune system, a white blood cell, macrophage, has to come and gobbles it up like Pac-Man, eats it up, and then buries it under your artery walls, right? Your endothelium, and then it causes foam cells, which lead to clots, artery clots, and then later they become plaques. Okay.
Yeah.
Covered this in depth in Monday Night Live, but then the guy is here. He's reviewing the same mechanism, and cover this in other episodes too. The oxidation of the cholesterol is what causes the atherosclerosis. So even though PUFAs lower your cholesterol, they also increase the risk of them becoming oxidized. So make that make sense.
Yeah. Exactly. So it sounds like your body has to lower its LDL because you are consuming PUFAs. I'm theorizing here. I'm obviously speculating on a mechanism, but the body's trying to protect itself by reducing the count of LDLs because you're consuming PUFAs, because the body knows PUFAs will oxidize LDL. Therefore, it's trying to protect itself. So you see the effect of lower LDL.
Yeah.
I would speculate.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because at some point here he talks about like um, the some of the signaling pathways that the PUFAs actually affect and how that actually regulates cholesterol. But there's a here the last paragraph of this page is interesting. Um, because he says the point of this discussion is to stress the fact that PUFAs are not only found in vegetable oils, but also are present at low to moderate concentrations in most animal fats as well. Regardless of the source, PUFAs are highly susceptible to lipid peroxidation, which can lead to atherosclerosis, heart disease, cancer, inflammation, and other unhealthy processes. And check this out, mammals preferentially oxidize PUFAs via the beta oxidation pathway in mitochondria for ATP production, or in peroxisomes to recycle excess PUFAs into saturated fatty acids and MUFAs to eliminate a portion of these reactive nutrients. So that's pretty interesting. If that's true, and I don't know if it's true, but if that is true, that is very interesting. Mammals preferentially oxidize PUFAs using beta oxidation. How do you upregulate beta oxidation? Ketosis, right?
Yeah. So being in ketosis, um, you're using beta oxidation for ATP production, and the excess PUFAs are turned into saturated fatty acids and monounsaturated fatty acids.
Yeah,
Basically,
kind of like to buffer down that harmful effect of the PUFAs.
yeah. Yeah, so the body's trying to protect itself in several different and clever ways. Oh yeah, so this figure one is pretty cool. Basically, what happens when you take out dietary saturated fatty acids and you replace it with refined carbohydrates and sugars. Here's showing you you get higher serum triglycerides, higher small dense LDL, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, de novo lipogenesis. That is the turning of carbohydrate into fat, de novo
Yeah,
lipogenesis,
to saturated fats.
to saturated fats, which is very interesting. Uh, what if you replace dietary saturated fats with polyunsaturated fatty acids, PUFAs? You get higher immune system activation, higher inflammatory response, higher resolution of inflammation. The body's trying to recover from this inflammation at a higher rate. Higher lipid peroxidation, that's the process that produces the reactive oxygen species, all the free radicals. Oxidative stress, inflammation, atherosclerosis, and cancer. And decreases nuclear SRABP, lowers cholesterol synthesis, lowers fatty acid synthesis, and higher beta oxidation of PUFA, higher ROS, higher de novo lipogenesis. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. This is basically charting what happens in your body
Yeah,
when you make the
that's a beautiful
switches.
chart. Yeah, can't win either way.
Yeah, just don't replace it. Problem solved. Um, all right, so
Yeah,
over here. In addition, some animal fats that are classified as saturated fats contain significant amount of PUFAs, such as lard, which contains 10% linoleic acid, similar to palm and olive oil. Um, so that is interesting because the dietary recommendations always say, hey, have more vegetable oils, more heart healthy oils, more of your seed oils. When lard seems to have the same proportion of PUFA as the palm oil and olive oil. However, lard still gets classified as saturated fat. Um,
yeah,
which is,
yeah.
is just
Animal fats are not just saturated fat, right?
yeah,
Even beef tallow is like half and half saturated and monounsaturated.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, monounsaturated, which is omega-9 oleic acid.
omega 9s.
Yeah. So yeah, moving on to the next section. Um, So before here he talked about PUFA oxidation and lipid peroxidation, right?
Mhm.
Now he's going to talk about fatty acids and serum lipids, like their relation. So the primary factor that determines whether a person has low, normal, or high concentrations of serum cholesterol is genetic. The effect of dietary fats on any individual's serum cholesterol is superimposed on the genetically determined concentration of serum cholesterol. Yeah, whenever I talk about genetics, I think you got to take that with a as a as a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Yeah, because oh, my genes. Yeah, but moving on, the biochemical processes that determine serum cholesterol concentrations are the rate of cholesterol synthesis, especially in the liver, and the metabolic consumption to form numerous steroid products in the body. The expression of genes that code for enzymes that synthesize cholesterol and other lipids is regulated by a group of transcription factors known as sterol regulatory element binding proteins. So that's your SREBPs, right?
Yeah.
SREBPs. And in the chart above, you showed that increasing your PUFA intake down regulates your SREBPs, your sterol regulatory element binding proteins, which are responsible for cholesterol synthesis in tissues, organs like the liver. Okay, so here, moving on to the next highlighted part, they say when cholesterol concentrations are high in the cells, events occur to decrease the presence of SRBPs in the nucleus, which diminish cholesterol synthesis and uptake from the circulation. The presence of PUFAs can decrease the amount of nuclear SRBP to decrease the synthesis of fatty acids, cholesterol, and other lipids, with long-chain omega-3 PUFAs showing the strongest activity in this capacity. Saturated fatty acids and MUFAs do not have any influence on these control mechanisms.
Very interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah. So long-chain omega-3 PUFAs show the strongest activity in down-regulating SRABP, which again, SRABP is responsible for regulating cholesterol synthesis. Okay, so more omega-3 PUFAs, lower cholesterol synthesis. So that is one pathway, and that is affected by the PUFA intake, right? SRABPs. And then the other one is PPARs. So another class of fatty acid activated transcription factors that promote gene expression are peroxisome proliferator activated receptors, PPARs. So,
Nailed it.
this gets very technical, but basically what you got to understand is both of these mechanisms mediate, they regulate, they control cholesterol synthesis in the body. When you consume PUFAs, both of these are down-regulated and cholesterol synthesis drops.
Yes.
Yeah, so let me see.
Let's skip ahead here.
Yeah, to the next part. So
Yeah.
consequently, when PUFAs are abundant as a result of increased dietary intake, the liver enzymes for beta oxidation of excess PUFAs in peroxisomes will help to limit the amount of PUFAs in the body to prevent excessive lipid peroxidation. In addition, many PUFA metabolites such as eicosanoids, endocannabinoids, and the oxidative derivatives 9 and 13 hydroxyoctadecadenoic acids will also activate PPR alpha in the nucleus. So these metabolites of oxidation products of PUFAs would be an indicator of sufficient PUFAs present in the body tissues to satisfy their need for synthesis of bioactive signaling agents, and the excess should be eliminated. The main point of this discussion is that PUFAs, rather than saturated fatty acids or monounsaturated fatty acids, are responsible for regulating cholesterol metabolism and consequently serum cholesterol and lipoprotein concentrations. The key factor is the level of PUFAs in the diet, which can influence the mechanisms for cholesterol synthesis, uptake, and distribution. Changes in the amount of saturated fatty acids or MUFAs consumed in the diet will have little or no influence on these mechanisms. So that was quite a mouthful. But yeah, but right, the main point is that dietary PUFAs regulate, again, your cholesterol metabolism and serum and lipoprotein concentrations, independent of saturated fatty acid or MUFA in your diet. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. What is interesting is that, they again mentioned beta oxidation and how the body will try to get rid of excess PUFAs to limit the amount of peroxidation. So I think they're actually referring to some animal studies here in rats, and you know whether that's true for a human or not, I don't think we know yet. Um,
But it could be
rat.
a good indicator, right? If the other organisms, living organisms, are kind of protecting themselves from the PUFAs, uh, we could probably extend that to humans as well.
Yeah, yeah, um, and even then, you know, rats are probably not as effective with their lipid metabolism as humans are,
Yeah,
right?
true.
So, maybe we prioritize PUFAs even more, or something like that.
Yeah, we're
Um,
certainly more resilient, right? Given the
yeah,
amount of PUFAs that we consume, we're not dropping dead right away. We kind of like hang in there for years and years and years.
yeah, absolutely. So, and then he talks about some studies compare olive oil with palm oil, and they found no difference in serum cholesterol concentrations of young, healthy human volunteers. Palm oil diets had much more saturated fatty acids than olive oil diets. However, both diets contain the same amount of PUFAs, right? So
Hmm.
I understand what he's saying here. Palm oil has more saturated fats than olive oil, but they both showed no difference in the serum cholesterol because they both contain like the same amount of PUFA. Um, that's an interesting theory,
Yeah,
but they're both plant oils,
yeah, yeah. They're both
right?
plant oils, and yeah, here the olive oil is what 15% saturated fat, just to express this, and palm oil is 50% saturated fat. They have it highlighted here. 40% mono unsaturated fat, 10% PUFA. So because both had the same amount of PUFAs, it seems that the serum cholesterol levels did not change in the young, healthy human volunteers, despite the change in saturated fatty acids.
Yeah. So here's a question for you, Jay. Does that mean palm oil should be preferred versus olive oil? How would you interpret that? Because remember, palm is actually a fruit. You
Yeah,
actually can get palm fruit oil or palm kernel oil. Kernel being the seed.
yeah.
So they don't make a distinction here, but I assume actually I don't know what a palm is, but
Palm, Palm,
yeah,
Palm Beach, man. What
Palm Beach.
what they have on, what they have in the streets of Palm Beach,
Yeah,
uh,
because
on the beach
I
of
mean,
Palm Beach,
it seems to me palm oil should be preferred over olive oil. Yet
because of the
even
saturated fat.
yeah, but yet being in this nutrition space for a long time, no one really talks about palm oil.
Yeah.
Everyone usually says olive, coconut, or avocado oil.
Hmm.
Should they be from a good enough quality, are preferred. Um, of course, my stance is in animal fats we trust. But
Yeah, you have to go back to your premise, your principle that animals got your back, animals are here for us, animals are a gift of nature to humans.
yeah, yeah,
So,
absolutely, 100%. Preach. Amen,
so,
brother.
so yeah, you have to kind of look at this, think, oh yeah, that's pretty interesting. What about animal fats? They're
Hmm.
not animal fats, so I'll remain skeptical about it. But it is a good question to ask yourself. Palm oil, um, is it acceptable? Maybe, maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
it seems to me just from the fatty acid composition, palm oil is safer than olive oil.
hmm, higher saturated fats.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Also, yeah. So yeah, just to wrap up here this paragraph, it says that the estimated 6 to 8 grams per day of PUFAs, about 10% of the total fatty acids, which is the ratio that both of these oils had in the diet, would be sufficient to satisfy normal requirements for production of bioactive products without causing adverse health effects. In addition, a ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 PUFAs near 1 or 2, but certainly less than 5, would be optimum for good health. So that is also a question. We will have to look at the at the ratio or the quantity of omega-6 and omega-3s in that 10% of that olive oil and palm oil. Um, whichever has more favorable omega-3 quantities or ratios um, will still be good.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So now we move on to the importance of palmitic acid in development and physiology. I think this is my favorite part of this paper.
Nice.
This was because, yeah, generally I understand saturated fats are more chemically stable. They might be preferred. But, saturated fat is not just saturated fat. You have many kinds of saturated fats. You have short, medium, long chain saturated fatty acids, like butyric acid, MCTs.
Medium chain
Um,
triglycerides. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Trying to see if I don't actually remember a name for one of those. But then you have your long chain saturated fatty acids, palmitic acid, stearic acid, lauric acid. Um, so the top three I can remember right now. Those might be the most common. But even then, there's probably like tens, if not hundreds, of different saturated fatty acids um, present in food. But it begs the question. Do different fatty acids have different effects in the human body? Right. So here he talks about palmitic acid, and I found this very interesting. So reading on, palmitic acid is the major saturated fat in the human diet and in the human body. There you go. Seems to me palmitic acid is good. Yeah. Check this out. The human baby is one of the fattest of all mammals at normal gestational birth. The adipose fat is 45 to 50% palmitic acid, and the baby continues to add fat during the early months of life under normal circumstances. A human baby will have about 2% PUFAs in adipose tissue at birth. Innes, who was the lady who looked into this research, raised concerns that infants fed formulas with lipids coming from vegetable oils accumulated less than or equal to 26% of linoleic acid in adipose tissue, mostly replacing palmitic acid, whereas linoleic acid increased to 6 to 8% in breastfed infants after 7 months. Mammary glands produce predominantly saturated fatty acids regardless of the mother's dietary fat intake. I think that's very fascinating. I think, just to highlight again, when babies are born, about 2% of their adipose tissue is PUFA. When they're fed formula, that can increase up to or less than, up to or
Yeah.
equal to 26%. Okay? So from 2% to 26% if they're fed
Wow.
formula. If they're exclusively breastfed, it will go from 2% to 6 to 8% in their adipose tissue.
Yeah.
Okay? So, that is from 8% to 26%. That is what, over 3 times the
Yeah.
linoleic acid if they're fed formula. Are we meant to accept that this is beneficial for baby's health, for their development, for our health?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a result of, modern industrialized food. So do we really know the impact of this on children's health or their mental health, their hormonal health, their development? I don't know. Look at the state of the world today. Something's very clearly wrong.
Yeah. And this last sentence too, right? Mammary glands produce predominantly SFAs regardless of mother's dietary fat intake. So
Wow.
it's like you gotta give the baby SFAs. Gotta give the baby, no matter what, has to get SFAs. So it just again, this is just another piece of proof, another piece of evidence that we should look at that this is important. This is meaningful. This matters. Um, you know, a woman's organism is knows wisdom that we don't even comprehend, or it's doing what it has to feed its offspring. That's really powerful, really.
Yeah, it's the you know I mean, people would call this like a naturalistic appeal to nature fallacy. But I mean, like the woman will make predominantly saturated fatty acid regardless of the fat that they're eating, you know? So if you want to make the case that PUFA vegetable oils are healthier for human health, the burden of proof is on you to prove that, right?
Mhm.
It seems like saturated fats are like the human body's preferred fat. We make it endogenously, and women make it preferentially to feed it to newborns. Okay, I'm not sure what exactly other data point, evidence-based nerds might need to understand that, right?
But it's trying to kill you, man. It's trying to kill you. It's been killing you since the 60s.
And why do they say that? Because again, they will keep on coming back to say that saturated fats increase cholesterol, increase LDL cholesterol, and LDL cholesterol is an independent risk factor for heart disease, is what they'll say. So they need cholesterol to be bad in order for saturated fats to be bad, in order to tell you that you should limit it to less than 10% of your calories. Okay? Once you do away with the fact that LDL is it's not a good risk factor for anything, all of that, falls flat on its face. That's why you'll see all these mental academic gymnastics, Mendelian randomization trials, which, they don't like. Tell me, if you're watching this, tell me how a Mendelian randomization trial takes into consideration other confounding factors. It doesn't. It's literally just like juggling the pieces around, and if you torture the data long enough, you can get it to reveal what you want, which is exactly what they've done to justify that. And besides, it's just like some mathematical gymnastic puzzle that people have done, and they call it randomized Mendelian trial, like randomized control trial, whatever. It's like, how's that for a randomized control trial? It's like, well, it's not. It's just mathematic gymnastics.
Yeah.
So, but still, pay attention, because it's two different parts, right? Part one, saturated fats increase cholesterol, and part two, cholesterol is an independent risk factor for heart disease.
Yeah.
Both of the second one of which is demonstrably false. We've covered it in the previous study club. We covered it many times. We covered it on Instagram many times. It's just,
It's the heart of the matter.
it is, yeah, it is. It seems to me
Oh.
saturated fats and animal fats got us covered.
Yes. It's for us.
Yeah. Where were we? Okay, moving on.
Oh, moving on.
Yeah. The unique composition of triglycerides in mammalian milk, human as well as ruminant milk, compared with vegetable oils, provides clues regarding the importance of palmitic acid to infant development. When infants were fed formula consisting of vegetable triglycerides, the proportion of linoleic acid increased dramatically, up to 46% of fatty acids in adipose tissue by 10 months of age.
Wow.
Oh my God. Although increasing PUFA intake in infants can marginally lower serum cholesterol at 1 year of age, such manipulations in the PUFA content of infant formula and diets could have longer-term consequences that do not seem to have been followed in those cohorts. So, they're talking about reducing serum cholesterol for 1-year-olds.
Wow.
What kind of madness is that? Like, seriously?
So here's the mother's body, how babies have been fed there basically since the beginning of human existence, right? Here's the mother's breast milk giving you saturated fatty acids for the baby, and here we are overriding that, thinking that the mother's body is trying to give heart disease to the baby. that come on.
Come on, man. What a bunch of poppycock.
What a bunch of poppycock, man.
Yeah. Complete poppycock. Yeah. Check this out. This is even more alarming. So palmitic acid is a major fatty acid in brain phospholipids, constituting 45 to 55% in phosphatidylcholine fractions. Palmitic acid is used by cells to form sphingolipids. Hey, sphingolipids, with which cholesterol and palmitoylated proteins are important components of lipid rafts that facilitate endocytosis in caveolae, as well as numerous cell signaling pathways. So, a bunch of jargon over there, but what they're telling you is, we know choline is good for phosphatidylcholine, which has something to do with our brains. I can't remember the specifics right now. Brain phospholipids. Yeah, so phosphatidylcholine is a phospholipid, right? And the brain consists of 45 to 55% of phosphatidylcholine fractions. So palmitic acid is good for our brain. It's not good. Like, our brain is made of this, right? When you start playing with that, you're playing with what constitutes your brain structural integrity, guys. Okay.
Wow.
Palmitic acid is used by cells to form sphingolipids. So again, we know. So butter is rich in palmitic acid. It's also the richest dietary source of butyric acid, which is said to be good for your gut health, digestive health, your colon, your colorectal cells, etc., etc.
Man, I'm gonna have some butter after this.
Yeah, I'm gonna go have a stick of butter.
Let's go for the brain.
Yeah, and they're important components of lipid rafts that facilitate endocytosis in caveolae. So I think that's just like a type of cell on our tissues, but endocytosis is like the mechanism by which our cells uptake things into them. Okay, that's just all it means. So when they say lipid rafts, they're referring to, like, if we could pull up. Maybe we can pull up a diagram. I don't know.
Yeah, you can share it in the chat if you have it. Or do you want me to search for it?
Hold on, let me see if I can find something.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I mean, if you look at if you pull up like a cell membrane, you'll see like the walls are actually made of like what are they called? Of like lipids, right? And the lipid rafts are like the little rivers, the little channels by which things move in and out. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, click any one of them. Click the first one. Yeah, glycoproteins, globular proteins, glycolipids. That's basically what it looks like. Can you open the one that's like 1, 2, 3 to the right?
This one?
Yeah. Well, that's what it looks like. So you see one of them has cholesterol. There's a bunch of stuff that goes on in our cell membranes, like too much. Too much. This is not a protein biochemistry class. Yeah, it's not a biochemistry class. But yeah, lipid rafts are like responsible for, helping facilitate some things move into the cell. So, I mean, the point is, palmitic acid is integral. It's essential. It's just like basic human physiology to how our body works, how our brain works, and how our cells work. The next sentence reads, palmitic acid is a major fatty acid in lung surfactant, and palmitoethylanolamide is a lipid mediator of intra and intercellular signals in many cells and tissues. Okay, so I mean, palmitic acid, again, pretty essential stuff. And when you're mixing up kids' diets, just human diets all across the board, you're playing with nature, like you're playing God, right? And we don't really know the consequences for these, but I would submit so many of the diseases of civilization we see today are a direct result of our hijacked nutrition guidelines, right? The recommendation to switch out dietary fats for more carbohydrates and more vegetable seed oils, undoubtedly, and the mass production of ultra-processed junk that is, not surprisingly, high in these cheap ingredients that are devoid of nutrients and just completely wreck your metabolism. So, a recent review indicated that there is no evidence that full-fat milk consumption leads to obesity or cardiometabolic risk in children and adolescents. A recent study found that higher milk fat consumption in 3-year-old Latino children was associated with significantly lower odds for severe obesity in that population. Milk consumption by children and adolescents decreased by 38% between 1977 and 1996, whereas sweetened beverage consumption increased by 215%, and consumption of fruit drinks increased by 189%.
Fruit drinks.
Fruit drinks, that's going to make Ray Peters happy, man.
Oh,
Like,
Ray Peters love this.
Sugar not bad. Sugar not bad. Sugar is good. Sugar good.
These children got healthier.
Yeah. Yeah. Did they now? Why didn't they, if that's the case? Oh,
yeah.
Poofers.
Poofers in the sugar sweetened drink.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think we're looking at many things, right? We're looking at increased lipid peroxidation levels across the population. We're looking at increased energy toxicity, right? So, caloric surplus all across the board by nature of, these engineered hyperpalatable foods, but they're also nutrient devoid, low in protein, calorically dense. It's just any way you look at it, from any angle you want to look at it, like it's clearly multifactorial attack on humankind from all angles, right? I mean, all angles. Low protein, high PUFA, high sugar, hyperpalatable, calorically dense. I couldn't think of a worse recipe if I wanted to give people disease.
Yeah. It's incredible, honestly, how resilient the human body is. Because growing up, I mean, you have soda, right? Every kid has soda. Kids are given low-fat milk, zero fat milk, right? While ironically, when you give them whole milk, they are at lower odds of severe obesity. Could it be that the whole milk kind of satisfy the kids' hunger versus the low-fat, zero-fat milk? Why would that be? More nutrients?
Why would that be? Yeah. Never mind if you fed them raw whole milk.
Wow.
Oh, man. We'd be a nation of gigachads.
Everyone would be gigachads, yeah.
Yeah. All right. You want to take care of this one?
This one, fatty acids and inflammation. Inflammation can arise from an acute immune response to insults or injury, causing pain and discomfort, but generally subsides with a pathogenic insult is brought under control and injured tissue is repaired. A more subtle form of inflammation, known as low-grade systemic inflammation, occurs when immune cells infiltrate adipose tissue, especially visceral adipose tissue in obese individuals. Chronic system inflammation can lead to insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, atherosclerosis, and a variety of other metabolic disruptions and unhealthy conditions. Basically explaining what inflammation is. It can be acute, so that's temporary, momentary, like going to the gym. That's acute inflammation. It goes away after you're done working out. But then there's chronic inflammation, or low-grade systemic inflammation. I know some people will kind of get in debates and try to argue, what the hell does that mean? But basically, here the author is saying that systemic inflammation, if you have chronically elevated levels of inflammation, it can lead to type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, atherosclerosis, all of these modern diseases. Inflammatory responses are initiated by a wide range of lipid mediators, including many eicosanoids formed from arachidonic acid, AA, the major omega-6 long-chain PUFA, in membrane phospholipids of immune cells. So yeah, here is he's saying that arachidonic acid seems to be um, causing an inflammatory response, right? Um, a similar array of pro-inflammatory eicosanoids are formed from EPA, but these are generally considered to be less provoking than the omega-6 derivatives from AA with regard to an immune response. So interestingly, EPA, so that's your omega-3, seems to have a similar pro-inflammatory response, but to a much lesser degree compared to the omega-6 response. Very interesting, because we are told omega-6, omega-3s, omega-6, omega-3s, eat, essential fatty acids, eat them.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
You get told nuts are healthy fats. Why? Why are they healthy fats? Because they're omega-3s and omega-6s.
Yeah. Flaxseed, walnut oil, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
What else do we have highlighted here?
Yeah, so it's an example of a study in rats comparing different fats and the resulting arthritis. Pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah. You want me to read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
A few studies of arthritic models in rats compared dietary saturated fats with polyunsaturated oils or supplementation with oils after arthritis was induced. When a diet containing corn oil, high in LA, was compared with beef tallow, low in essential fatty acids, EFAs, and fish oil diet with high omega-3 PUFAs, the corn oil diet strongly exacerbated adjuvant-induced arthritis in rats, whereas beef tallow diet resulted in relatively little inflammation, and rats fed with fish oil diet showed an intermediate level of inflammation. So worse corn oil, medium the fish oil, very little tallow,
Beef tallow.
beef tallow.
Yeah.
Animal fats got you. When rats were fed an EFA deficient diet, they showed much less adjuvant induced inflammation compared with animals fed a control diet. But the inflammatory response was restored when rats fed the EFA deficient diet were given corn oil supplement after adjuvant treatment. Interesting. So they reduced the EFAs, your essential fatty acids, that's your omega-3s, your omega-6s. The inflammatory response were reduced. But then you give them corn oil, which is, again, high in omega-6. Looks like the inflammatory response came back. Rats fed an EFA deficient diet starting with the day of the adjuvant treatment had 87% less edema in the hind foot pads compared with control rats, and edema increased when the animals on the EFA deficient diets were given a dose of 273 milligrams per deciliter linoleic acid after adjuvant treatment. Another study found that dietary fish oil increased inflammation relative to beef tallow for collagen-induced arthritis in rats, indicating that the omega-3 PUFAs in fish oil are pro-inflammatory relative to saturated fatty acids. That was also particularly interesting because it goes completely against what we're told about fish oil and omega-3, omega-6s. So could the omega-6 and omega-3s found in beef be enough? Maybe.
Yeah, that is a very good point you bring up, because you have to remember there is a minor amount of PUFA in beef tallow, right?
Yeah.
So unless it's grass-fed,
Grass-fed. Still, yeah, a little bit more omega-3s in the grass-fed, but it's so marginal, so minimal, the difference.
Yeah. And this was probably conventional grain-finished tallow being fed to the rats. So yeah. So but there you go. beef tallow produces the least inflammation in the joints. So, when we look at people who do carnivore diets and the sort of conditions, ailments they fixed or alleviated or remediated or put in remission, one of those things are, chronic inflammation, chronic pain, arthritis, right? Joint pain, muscle soreness, those kind of things seem to improve across the board when people cut out, obviously ultra processed foods and even vegetable plant foods, right? Pretty interesting, and increase their intake of beef and hopefully beef fat, right? If they're not eating too lean. So based on my observation, seems pretty cut and dry.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I think
Yes.
that's good enough with the
Yeah.
inflammation stuff. Moving on,
Yes. Let me
they
see.
talk about dietary fats and cancer.
Yeah.
So, I'll read. Early studies found that high-fat diets in laboratory animals could increase the incidence of spontaneous and chemically induced cancers. It was later found that chemically induced mammary tumors in rats were augmented by dietary polyunsaturated vegetable oil compared with saturated fats in coconut oil. Coconut oil, okay. Still plant oil,
Still plant,
still saturated, but
100%. It's like the only. It's the only food that has 100% saturated fat.
yeah, which is good, but it still's got plant sterols. So I wonder, what role that might play. Moving on. It is generally believed that omega-3 PUFAs from fish oils can suppress the effects of omega-6 PUFA derivatives by displacing AA in cell membranes and competing with AA for metabolism to eicosanoids. In addition to the omega-3 eicosanoids often having less potent actions compared with their omega-6 counterparts, it is estimated that 20% of cancer deaths could be due to inflammation and chronic infections. Pretty alarming stuff. Lipid peroxides, ROS, and oxidative stress are associated with inflammation and are frequently invoked in tumor promotion by causing a switch in cellular metabolism. One of the major switches in metabolism in cancer cells is toward glycolysis as a major pathway for ATP production. This makes tumor cells more reliant on carbohydrate as an energy source. Conditions that increase carbohydrate availability, such as insulin resistance and diabetes, can promote tumor growth. Animal studies have shown that caloric restrictions, ketogenic diets, and fasting can diminish cancer progression and metastasis.
Cancer death.
Yeah, cancer death, yes. One problem might be the level of omega-6 PUFAs consumed in a ketogenic diet, which could have an adverse effect in terms of cancer therapy. And final point, sugar, or more specifically fructose, is known to cause increased serum triglycerides, insulin resistance, and hyperglycemia, all of which will promote cancer.
More specifically, fructose. Dum, dum, dum.
Fructose, yeah.
Again, this was not the purpose. We were not trying to call out fructose, but here it is. Fructose increases trigs.
Yeah, and just to be clear, this is not a study, right? This is just a dude's opinion. Of course, he is making references and everything and providing evidence for his claims, but his opinions seem to align very well with what we, in our estimation, presume to be common sense.
Yeah. I mean, we have common sense. Other people who seem confused, their common sense may be compromised.
Yeah.
Other people that are B12 deficient, their common sense might be compromised.
Yeah, they were probably raised on formula, and they have lower than ideal levels of palmitic acid in their brain and in their tissues and in the fractions of phosphatidylcholine that makes up their lipid rafts in their cells. So we're talking about a So we're talking about a highly dysfunctional human being, right? Is this even a human being, right? This is a new specimen, right? Made out of vegetable oils. This is an alien.
Oh,
This is
oh,
aliens are here on Earth, and they've been bred by
vegetable oil
soybean
companies.
plants. Yeah,
Oh
by
yeah.
the absolutely by the vegetable oil companies.
The plants have taken over the vegetable oil consuming people.
Yeah, they have alarmingly high levels of uh,
Of
icosanoids, inflammatory icosanoids in their system.
yeah,
Icosanoids, yeah.
it's crazy because it's like when you there's always a debate of breastfeeding versus formula, right? Growing up,
Is there a debate?
well, it's like I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I think I'm just trying to recall from memory about how people would say, "Oh, I gave them formula," or "Hey, I didn't give them breast milk throughout the entire period."
Yeah,
Right? I know. Our mom, she gave both of us breast milk through all of our childhood, and she made a conscious effort to give us that. She says she makes a lot of effort. She made a lot of effort to make sure that we got that. Um, and here we are, just being pushing against the grain. So
here we are, loaded with common sense. Look at look at the trend, right? If only we could do an epidemiological study and look at mothers and the duration of breastfeeding, and then we just look at the outcomes of the children, like like what, say 20, 30 years down the line, at 20,
yeah.
25, 30 years of age, and we I don't know, we measure the outcome metric is like, how much common sense do they have? it can't it can't be self-reported though, they would lie. But
My common sense is maxed out.
yeah, we
Oh,
that would make an interesting paper. We need
yeah.
some well, how about like their stance on several political issues. How many genders are there? Dude, I bet there would be a I bet there would be a large split across the board, like between those who were fed formula and obviously believe what is contrary to nature, to
Mhm.
put it politely, and those who would fully subscribe to nature's laws.
Yeah.
Nature tells no lie.
There's no lie. You won't find a lie in nature,
Yeah, nature is perfectly balanced, as are we,
as are we.
or
Yes,
as we should be.
as we should be. Yes. So yeah, no, it's super interesting because I feel like growing up, I would see people say, I gave them formula, right, for whatever reason,
Yeah,
and
and the kid is like stunted.
and the perception was that it's equally good, right, and that's why how people would justify giving them formula.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, that is the perception. Yeah, it's just
yeah,
as good.
but in reality, it's just doesn't seem like it. It's pretty
Absolutely
sad.
not. And then feed them formula, put them on cereal, and then just feed them like peanut butter and toast,
Low
pasta.
fat.
Yeah, low fat cheese, low fat milk, fortified with retinol, palmitate, vitamin A, synthetic vitamin D, fortified milk, fortified bread fortified with, B1, B12, B9, like vitamin C bread. Like, what the heck is this, man? This is like Play-Doh food.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's crazy.
And then it's like, oh, people caught on to the whole grains bad, but guess what? They got to the vegetables way before then. They got to the vegetables, through the use of agrochemicals and pesticides and presence of
Yeah.
Heavy metals, residual heavy metals on these foods,
Oh yeah, our
right?
first episode. There's heavy
Yeah,
metals in baby food. Man,
heavy metals
babies,
in baby foods, you know.
poor babies, man.
Even the ones labeled organic,
Absolute
even the ones labeled
nonsense.
organic or organic, you know, these sweet potato purees that come in the pouches that are being fed to babies with the label organic. You know, parents think they're doing the right thing. Oh my God. Yeah. That was like what, episode 1 or 2, I believe.
Episode, I think, yeah, 1 or 2.
Yeah. Heavy metals in baby food. Tragic stuff. Tragic stuff, you know.
It's definitely not good.
All right. Yeah. Let's wrap this up.
Conclusion. All right. Conclusion. Whether dietary saturated fats raises serum cholesterol or whether dietary PUFAs lower serum cholesterol might appear to be a moot point to some individuals. It is important to recognize that the focus on decreasing dietary fats resulted in a large increase in carbohydrate consumption, which has had undesirable health consequences as illustrated by the dramatic rise in obesity, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and associated diseases. In addition, replacing saturated fats with unsaturated oils could have exacerbated diseases associated with lipid peroxidation and oxidative stress. Um, Excellent. When studying a free living population, it is impossible to separate the effects of any given dietary component from the myriad of other constituents of the diet, their respective impacts on some physiological phenomenon, and the gene dietary constituent interactions, because the genetic makeup of each individual is different. The various ways in which PUFAs, especially the omega 6 PUFAs found in vegetable oils, can augment inflammation and exacerbate a wide range of diseases associated with inflammation have been discussed here.
Yep.
And lastly, you wanna take it away on the last paragraph?
Lipid peroxidation can cause oxidative stress and vice versa, and the role of these phenomena in several diseases is well documented. It is inappropriate to assign adverse effects to dietary saturated fats because saturated fats are chemically stable, synthesized from other nutrients in the body, notably carbohydrates and PUFAs, and are generally maintained within certain limits in most tissues according to physiological control mechanisms. On the other hand, PUFAs are unstable to chemical oxidation, and their oxidation products are harmful in a variety of ways. PUFAs also form powerful signaling agents that can initiate inflammation, which can have dire health consequences as described above. Many of the oxidized metabolites of PUFAs, especially omega-3 PUFAs, can also resolve inflammation. If saturated fats are replaced by carbohydrates in the diet, there would be no significant improvement in serum cholesterol, and it can result in a more atherogenic lipoprotein profile. When looking at much of the data in the context of known biochemical and physiological mechanisms, it appears that saturated fats are less harmful than the common alternatives. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful paper by Professor. Damn it, I forgot his name again. What's his name? Professor Lawrence. Glenn D. Lawrence. Man, I'm gonna try to reach out to this guy. He seems to have some hot takes. Again, this paper came out in 2021.
Recent paper.
Yeah. Yeah. And then on the topic of PUFAs, I think one of the things we covered in one of our previous episodes, the one about does red meat cause colon cancer?
Mm-hmm.
We discussed one of the data points we had was, well, if red meat doesn't cause colon cancer, because it doesn't, what might? And there were some interesting animal studies that compared saturated fats and PUFAs in rats or mice and mixed with red meat. And they found that the PUFAs combined with the heme iron was actually carcinogenic versus the saturated fats.
Mm-hmm.
You're right, versus the non-polyunsaturated fats in the mice or the rats, whatever they were.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Another data point in favor of what Professor Lawrence is submitting here, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's all very interesting, all very interesting. Definitely goes against, mainstream belief. Um, I would think, because they are essential fatty acids, we need them. But perhaps what we find in animal foods is just enough. It's right. Perhaps it's the right amount. Right.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
yeah. That's why. Yeah, it just seems like when in doubt, you can just refer to what you find in animal foods, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and I believe that goes for all animal foods. Of course, I don't think we should eat as much poultry as people do currently, but still,
Mm,
like if you're prioritizing red meat, I don't think poultry here and there should be an issue.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
I
again,
mean, yeah, relying entirely on poultry is probably not a good idea.
yeah,
Probably, I would say probably, but I wouldn't know. I haven't tried going full poultry.
yeah, no,
It's it's mainly red meat that we do. Um, um, but then again, I don't want to discourage people from not having chicken, right? It's
yeah,
just I think the problem is that the leanness. You definitely want fatness in it.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, you'll probably see marginally higher omega sixes in like the chicken, for example, but but nothing compared to the vegetable oils.
yeah,
Nothing like that.
and all across this paper, the Professor Lawrence is consistently referring to vegetable seed oils. You know, PUFAs in vegetable seed oils rarely are PUFAs in animal meats being addressed.
Yeah,
So there's that to consider too. I,
that's
for
true.
one, based on what I've seen, I do not think PUFAs in meats are as much of a concern as PUFAs from vegetable seed oils, right? Because, the net PUFA content is different. And also, we know that the lipid peroxidation of these vegetable seed oils can happen, you know, long before the vegetable seed oil makes it to like cooking,
Yeah,
right? And even during the cooking, it is more chemically unstable than the others.
yeah,
So, do we have a good answer for this? No, I don't think so, which is a shame. But still, uh, I still think like a well-rounded, diverse amount of animal foods is important. And of
mm,
course, if you can spare the extra money, going higher quality, it's nice. I don't think it's necessary. I think as
yeah,
long as I think by and large, saturated fat should be mostly of your dietary fat.
yeah,
Seems to be very little case to
yeah.
include any PUFA or purposefully try to include any PUFA or even like supplement omega-3.
Yeah, right. Because at early carnivore or around early keto period, when the keto diet came out, everyone's like, "Oh, you gotta get your omega threes. Start buying your fish oil, your krill oil, get your liver cod liver oil, get all of that, get your omega threes." And it's like
Yeah,
walnut oil too, right? Hemp seed oil. Um, right? So obviously no distinction between plant form omega threes versus animal form omega threes. Animal forms still preferred, uh, but it seems like it's okay not to consume so much, and that little that you consume, it is essential. But your body has a defense mechanism to prevent these peroxidation, to prevent peroxidation of these PUFAs when you eat them. So you're cooking your beef, you shouldn't worry too much about whatever minimal amount of omega 3s omega 6s are there. Your body will be able to protect it. itself from it, and use whatever it needs from that too, because they are still essential. What's interesting too, right, is that this paper says that it's between 6 grams to 8 grams per day of PUFAs. That seems to be the limit, that you don't see any adverse health effects.
Hmm.
It seems greater than that per day, it's bad, but less than that seems to be okay. Um, which is about 10% of the calories. And guess what they recommend? You should have 10% of your calories saturated fat.
Yeah.
So they flipped it. They have flipped it. It's 10% PUFAs, rest, mono, and fat. They're saturated.
Yeah. Yeah. And animal fats just make sense.
It make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think even from a historical perspective, humans have preferred animal fats, right? And it's interesting because if you increase dietary fat, you're increasing carbohydrate intake, you're increasing PUFA, and both of these are now associated with metabolic derangement. And of course, an evidence-based nerd would come and say, "Did you equate for calories?" And that's an important caveat to consider, right? It seems like caloric restriction, you know, undergoing caloric restriction for certain periods has protective properties, even if you're eating, not ideal ingredients, and that might just be by the body's own like self-sufficiency mechanisms, autophagy and all, right?
Yeah, yeah, because
Cleaning itself up.
you're burning more than what you're using. So whatever you ate, right? So So if you let's run through this. So if you eat junk, say omega sixes, omega threes, and then you're burning more than what you ate, that what you ate gets completely used, so it doesn't get stored in your body, right? So uh, yeah, those omega threes, omega sixes having to be converted by the liver into adipose tissue, or getting added into your adipose tissue. So I can see how that could be, being in a deficit can be protective.
Exactly. Exactly. So there's always that caveat, right?
Yeah.
Again, like the number one enemy is energy toxicity.
Energy toxicity.
Yeah.
Yes.
But, and of course, it's not as simple as, eat less, move more, because a lot of this is behavioral. Uh, it it's almost like exclusively behavioral, right? Like it's your behaviors that are going to control how much you're consuming and your activity levels throughout the day, based on how you feel. People are not fat because, wait, what is it? People are not sick because they're fat. They're fat because they're sick. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, they're fat because they're sick,
They're fat because they're
right?
sick. Yes.
Yeah, and they're sick because of what they're shoving down their pipe hole, unbeknownst to them, it being very harmful, right?
Yeah.
Unbeknownst to them, their brains are being tricked and hijacked by the food engineers, food chemists, and scientists who optimize these foods to, increase profit, increase hyperpalatability, and reduce costs by virtue of the ingredients they use. So,
Yeah.
very complicated. And again, it seems high protein, animal-based diets, very effective.
Very effective, very simple, very tasty.
Yeah.
Tastes good for a reason. There's a reason why type 2 diabetic people revert the diabetes, their hypertension, their autoimmune diseases. You're getting healthier, man.
Yeah.
You lose the weight, you get rid of diabetes, you get healthy, you get rid of your metabolic syndrome. you get healthy eating this way, you're not getting more sick. You're not increasing your chances of heart disease. Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
Healthy is as healthy does, and our daily bread is not.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, man. I mean, so some people get scared. Some people get scared that LDL goes up a little bit, right? And in this paper would say LDL is probably going up because you're consuming lower PUFAs.
Exactly. Oh yeah. Which is good.
It's that's how pervasive this thing is, because for the last 60 years and still to this day, LDL is a problem. Saturated fat is a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And they need it to be a problem. Again, I can't stress this enough because like this narrative is so pervasive, and they'll try to throw things at you. ApoB. Oh my God. Like
Hey,
Mendelian
Bobby, man.
Mendelian randomization trials, and really all that is just tactics to scare the unsuspecting naive person, to scare them into thinking like, oh, so LDL is not bad, but ApoB is actually like the real deal. you know oh,
Yeah.
this new study, the randomized Mendelian randomization trial, that is the real deal. And all it is scientific jargon, blubbery, you know poppycock.
Poppycock.
Yeah, it's nothing but poppycock to
Yeah.
confuse you.
Yeah.
And no surprise, the answer is in nature. Nature tells no lies.
Nature tells no lies.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to bring up the diagram, kind of like showing the problem of taking away saturated fats, because this is pretty good. You had two paths. You take away the saturated fats, you get the carbohydrates. You all your lipid panels get worse. Or you go the more polyunsaturated fat route too. All these inflammatory markers go up as well. So it's quite the opposite of what we're being told.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so here's a question for you, Jay. So, it says refined carbs and sugars, but what if you replace that with uh, fruits, honey, and maple syrup?
Well, what is honey and maple syrup? Are they refined? Well, they're easily convertible sugar, right? Compared to sugar itself. So I would equate that to sugar. So honey, basically, honey and maple syrup are just the same as sugar. Okay. Fruit is not refined. It has fiber. So probably fruit doesn't apply to this section, to this refined carbohydrate path.
Mm-hmm.
Um, fruits are also going to be lower in sugar, total sugar. So
Yeah,
the
higher in fiber.
higher in fiber, so the response from the body is not going to be the same as refined carbohydrates or sugar or honey or maple
Exactly.
syrup. Honey and maple syrup are just liquid sugars, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like,
They
I mean,
raise they
I'd be,
raise yeah
I'd be
they raise
shocked
your
if
blood
anyone
glucose
tries to.
levels. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if anyone tries to argue otherwise, because I mean, yeah, it's in its whole food matrix, but I mean, sugar is sugar, right? Like,
Yeah.
from a molecular standpoint.
Yeah. It's going to break down the
Yeah.
same way as sugar. But yeah, fruit's a good one, right? So it's a good dessert, good natural dessert, you could say.
Yeah, yeah. I think you'd just be like, it, if you replace the saturated fatty acids with, like, say, in this diagram, and it just said like fruits, um, I think it's basically like a mild form of a refined carb, if you will. So like an attenuated response by virtue of the fiber, versus like if you replace that with like fruit juice, then I wouldn't be shocked to see like the same outcome as you do with the refined carbs and sugars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then you're just like you're basically having like the refined sugars from fruit like in a juice. So
Yeah.
something to keep in mind. I don't think fruit is completely harmless,
Yeah.
but it is harder for it to be harmful.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right, Jay. Why do you say we wrap it up?
Let's wrap it up. Let's wrap up the study club.
Yeah, gotta go have dinner. We have oxtail soup. I am
Nice.
an oxtail carnivore now.
Nice. But that's still muscle meat, though. So.
Yeah. Nice and fatty, collagen rich.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good.
Yeah. Did you go get eggs? You should go get eggs, man.
I
Farmer.
I texted Dylan today this morning, and he just got back to me right before we started, so I haven't replied back. So probably tomorrow I'll pick up some eggs.
Nice. Yeah. Don't leave the farmer hanging.
Yeah. I gotta go collect my eggs.
Yeah. Make some egg shakes.
Egg shakes, baby. All right,
man.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Study Club with Butterfueled. Your hosts were Mr. Anderson over here, over there, and Jay over here. Thank you for watching. Hope you learned a lot. Hopefully, we answered some things. Courtney says, I feel so educated.
Oh, she's here.
Thanks. Thank you, Courtney.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have some confirmation bias, right? So
yes.
It feels like we're on the right track.
Basically. But yes. Thanks a lot, and you'll catch us on next time.
Peace.
Next time. Have a good night.
But